Hello, hello, hello. What is going on, everybody? Happy Monday and welcome to the Astro Room. As always, I am your host and your favorite astrologer, Mel of Divine Feminine Works, where I help people unlock their divinity and discover their magic. So if you are new, welcome. And as always, if you are returning, welcome back. So this channel is everything tarot, astrology, spirituality, and manifestation. So if those are the things you like, if those are the things you love, if those are the things you want to learn more about, don't forget to hit that subscribe button as well as that notification bell so you'll always be notified when I come out with new content. And speaking of content, if you want even more content, I've got loads of excellent content on the daily over on Instagram. So head over there and hit that follow button. All right, my loves. So happy Monday, new week. We are almost at a new month. And speaking of new, we've got a new moon solar eclipse going down tomorrow. So there's a lot to talk about this week because we've got an eclipse. We've got planet changing signs. We have two planets changing. Well, we've got two planets changing signs and one planet changing direction. So we've got a lot going on this week. A lot of good stuff on the way. You're probably already feeling the effects of that eclipse, but I'll get more into that in a second. As always, let's take care of some housekeeping first. So if you're here with me live, don't forget to hit that like button and say hello on your way in. All right. And so if you are interested in astrology, and if you love horoscopes, I'm excited to announce that I've got a new service where you can get your horoscope texted right to your phone every week. So if you're interested in that, text ZODIAC to 855-826-5544. Let me put that up again for you guys. That's 855-826-5544. Just text the word ZODIAC and you will begin to receive your weekly horoscope every week. It's really cool. So far, the people that have enrolled are loving it. It's actually me that you're talking to. It's not some bot or anything like that. So it's pretty cool. So definitely think about signing up for that. And if you missed the information that just flashed across your screen, the information will be in the description box below. All right. Hello, Patricia Jean. How are you? Thank you for tuning in. All right. So we also, if you are a fan of astrology and maybe you're new to astrology and you don't quite know what things are, or maybe you just started studying astrology and you're still a bit confused with all of the jargon, all of the information, I created this thing called the Astrology Basics cheat sheet, where it gives you the quick and dirty on everything you need to know to start studying astrology. So there are 4 basic pillars of astrology: the planets, the houses, the signs, and the aspects. And this 11-page PDF document gives you everything, basically. It gives you a quick summary of all of these things so you can commit them to memory and start learning astrology. But most importantly, it's not just about learning astrology. All of this information can be used to learn to read your natal chart. Now, if you're not aware, your natal chart is the blueprint to your life. It tells you so much about yourself. But if you don't know anything about astrology, or even if you're a novice at astrology, reading it can be a bit frustrating because it's a lot. It's a lot of signs, symbols, numbers, lines. This is the first step in learning how to read your natal chart and, again, start learning astrology. And if you're interested in copying this Astrology Basics cheat sheet, the link will be in the description box below. All right. So let's get into things. All right. So hopefully you guys have had a good start to the week. I know many of us are really going through it right now because we are almost at the eclipse, which is happening tomorrow. So many of us have already started feeling the effects of it. Yeah, it's just a lot. There's a lot going on. But like I said, I feel like there's a lot of good stuff this week, a lot of stuff that is clearing the way for better things to come in the future. We've got some energy shifts. So this week is kind of like a mixed bag in terms of the energy. I feel like many of us will be, again, reeling from whatever goes on with the eclipse. And then when we have Mercury changing signs, we've got Jupiter changing signs, and then we have Mars going retrograde, which is actually a big deal. All right. So again, I'm going to get into all of the nitty gritty as we work our way through this broadcast. All right. But if you're new to my lives, if you're new to the Astro Room, this thing that I started a couple of weeks ago, which I'm loving so far, and hopefully you guys love it too, is the segment that I like to call Learn Astrology. So rather than just spewing information at you and hoping that you learn something or hoping that you understand what I'm talking about, every week I'm going to teach you 3 different things about astrology, and these 3 things are going to be relevant to the week that we're talking about. So everything that you're learning in this little segment, you can apply to this upcoming week. All right. So it's great. Hopefully, again, you guys like it. So without further ado, let's get into this week's Learn Astrology segment. All right. So this week we are learning about retrogrades, solar eclipses, and Mars. All right. So most people are pretty familiar with retrograde, although I think they know retrograde in a sort of, how do I want to say it? Everyone's familiar with Mercury retrograde, but I don't think people necessarily understand retrograde in the technical astrological way. All right. So I'm here to sort of enlighten you with respect to that. So when a planet is retrograde, it's the apparent backward movement of a planet. All right. And so the energy of that planet is expressed inward. So from our vantage point here on Earth, when a planet goes retrograde, it appears to be moving backward, although technically it's really not. But the sort of the symbolic aspect of a retrograde planet is the fact that the energy that planet typically exudes, right? Rather than being directed outward, it's directed inward. Okay, so let's take a planet like Venus. Now, Venus doesn't go retrograde every year. Venus goes retrograde about every year and a half, roughly about 18 months, Venus goes retrograde. And when Venus goes retrograde, that energy of love, that energy of attraction, of magnetism, of charisma, of money, all of that stuff is directed inward. And when the energy of a retrograde planet is directed inward, it gives us a time to reflect. The best way to think of retrograde is okay? Retrograde, RE. It allows us to reflect, reassess, reevaluate, reveal sometimes. Okay. So it allows us a do-over. It allows us the opportunity to reflect on things. It allows us the opportunity to reevaluate things. It's like I said, it's like a do-over of sorts. Now, everyone always gets up in arms when they hear of like Mercury retrograde. Now, Mercury is one particular type of retrograde, right? Because the energy of Mercury is already kind of mixy and a little tricky. And so when it goes retrograde, that's when things go haywire. But it's not the case that when every planet goes retrograde, the energy is like Mercury retrograde. All right. When a planet like Pluto goes retrograde, it allows us to transform from the inside out. When a planet like Jupiter goes retrograde, and Jupiter is actually currently retrograde, it allows us to find our inner abundance. Okay. So retrograde is really a great thing because it allows us to perhaps go over a certain area of our life, go over certain things in our life, and we're able to pick up on things that we may have missed before, or we're able to see things from a different perspective. Much enlightenment can be gained at retrogrades, and it's also a time to rest. Especially a planet like Mars, which is getting ready to go retrograde on Sunday. When Mars is retrograde, we actually have less physical energy. It allows us to rest. It allows us to not be firing on all cylinders. Okay. So retrograde, by and large, it's not a bad thing. All right. I want you to keep that in mind. Although Mercury retrograde is definitely not a pleasant thing. When a planet generally goes retrograde, it's not a bad thing. All right. So that's retrograde. So next up, we've got solar eclipse, and we're actually experiencing a solar eclipse tomorrow. So a solar eclipse is when the moon passes between the sun and earth. Now, a solar eclipse always goes down at the new moon phase. It symbolizes new beginnings, and it symbolizes things being eclipsed into our lives. All right. So whenever there's an eclipse, a solar eclipse is at the new moon phase. It's when the sun and the moon are conjunct. They're at the same sign. They're at the same degree, typically in the same sign, right? It's the time of new beginnings. So a solar eclipse is a new moon on steroids. Eclipses are the universe's way of rearranging things in our lives. Lots of energy shifts happen at eclipses, and the energy is very potent because it's the universe sort of taking control for a second. Now, typically eclipses symbolize a time of surrender. You kind of have to let things be. You kind of have to let things fall. You have to let the chips fall where they may, and again, surrender and allow what's going to happen. Now, a solar eclipse, like I said, happens at the new moon phase. So it's all about new beginnings. And typically things that we need in our lives, whether it's people, whether it's places, whether it's things, are typically eclipsed in. Okay, so it's a time of new beginnings when new things may be added to our lives. But keep in mind, in order to add things, you might have to take things away first. You might have to clear the path and clear the area so that you can actually receive what's being eclipsed in. And that's definitely the case with this particular eclipse. Okay, it's all about new beginnings, but it's also about endings. First and foremost. All right. But I'll get more into that a bit later. So that's a solar eclipse. And so next up we have Mars. Okay. And so Mars is the planet of action and initiation. It rules the signs of Aries and Scorpio. It represents aggression, war, and physical activity. All right. So Mars is a powerful planet. It's a planet that has a lot to do with our physical strength. It has to do with war, but it really has to do with starting things. Mars energy is like that of a firecracker. It's all about initiation in a very bold and dynamic way. Now, whenever you feel anger, whenever you feel rage, a lot of that is the essence of Martian energy, okay? And there's definitely a place for that. Whenever you feel like confronting someone, whenever you feel like fighting, whenever you feel like defending, all of those things are emblematic of Mars energy, okay? And I bring up Mars this week because Mars is actually going retrograde on Sunday, like I mentioned before. And this is a pretty big deal because just like Venus, like I mentioned before, how Venus goes retrograde every 18 months, Mars goes retrograde every 2 years. So the last time we had Mars retrograde was at the tail end of 2020. And so this particular Mars retrograde is going to be interesting because Mars is in the sign of Gemini. It actually went into Gemini in August and it's not leaving Gemini until March. Okay, so wherever Gemini is in your chart, Mars is getting real comfortable there. Okay, and when Mars is retrograde, things slow down and we're able to rest. All right, but I'll get more into that going forward. All right. So that's this week's Learn Astrology. Hopefully you guys actually learned something and you're able to put that information to good use immediately. All right. So let's get into the highlights and see what we got for the week. All right. So we've got first total eclipse of the heart. This is going to be that new moon solar eclipse in the sign of Scorpio that's going down tomorrow. It's all about new beginnings, but endings first. It is what it is. All right. Next, we've got what I call dreams and fantasies. And this is Jupiter retrograding back into its home sign of Pisces. And this is going to be going down on Friday. This is a pretty big deal because this is Jupiter's home sign. Okay. So the energy is going to be super whimsical. It's going to be very dreamlike. It's going to be all about fantasy, but it's also going to be about good luck and abundance. All right. So it's actually a really good transit that's coming up. And then finally, we have what I like to call check your engine. And this is Mars going retrograde in Gemini. So like I said before, when Mars goes retrograde, it's about rest, right? It's almost like, you have to service your car every so often, right? Especially like if you're going to do something like go on a road trip. You make sure everything's running well. Your oil levels are good. You want to make sure your check engine light isn't on. That's sort of the essence of Mars retrograde. It allows us to quiet down, sort of get into that service station and repair what's necessary while we rest. All right. It's actually a really important transit for us. And again, that's going down on Sunday. All right. So that's the highlights. So now let's get into the week and into the nitty gritty. All right. So tomorrow, like I mentioned, we've got that new moon solar eclipse in Scorpio. Then on Wednesday, we have Mercury trine Mars. Thereafter on Thursday, we have Mercury square Pluto and the moon moving into Sagittarius. Thereafter on Friday, we have Jupiter in Pisces. Jupiter will be retrograding back into Pisces, like I mentioned before. Then on Saturday, we've got Mercury moving into Scorpio and the moon moving into Capricorn. And then we close out the week on Sunday with Mars going retrograde in Gemini. All right, so without further ado, let's get into the week. As always, we start at the beginning, which for this week is Tuesday. All right, so on Tuesday, as beautiful as that looks, we've got new moon solar eclipse in the sign of Scorpio. And you'll see on the chart, the sun and the moon are both at 2 degrees Scorpio. All right, so let's talk about it. Eclipses are a pretty big deal. Like I said before, it's the universe's way of sort of rearranging things. It's the universe's way of shifting things into position, kind of putting things where they need to go. Okay. And in Scorpio, you can expect things to get intense because Scorpio is a very intense sign in and of itself. All right. So this eclipse is going down at 6:48 a.m. Eastern Standard Time tomorrow, Tuesday, and it's happening at 2 degrees Scorpio. It's interesting because if you've watched my October monthly forecast, if you've watched any of my weekly astro forecasts over the last couple of weeks, you'll know that I've been saying this sort of ad nauseum that October is all about relationships. Like the topic of relationships has been a really big deal in October, and it's continuing with this solar eclipse. All right. So we had the new moon in Libra at the end of September going into October. Then we had the full moon in Aries. Both of those are about relationships. And same with this new moon solar eclipse. It's all about relationships. First and foremost, because the new moon is going to be conjunct Venus. Okay. So Venus is all about relationships, and Venus is going to be like all up in the mix with that new moon. When we talk about Venus and Scorpio, it's all about the realness of relationships. Venus and Scorpio doesn't want anything superficial. Venus and Scorpio wants to get to the heart of the matter. Venus and Scorpio wants to be able to open up and trust you, and in doing so has to know everything about you. Okay. The good, the bad, and the ugly. All right. And so that's sort of the essence of this new moon in Scorpio. But by and large, Scorpio is ruled by Mars. It's also ruled by Pluto. And Pluto is all about death and rebirth. Whenever I think of Scorpio, I always think of the phoenix rising from the ashes, right? But in order for the phoenix to rise from the ashes, the phoenix has to be on fire. And it's kind of what's going on with this solar eclipse. It's endings followed by beautiful new beginnings. But this ending and new beginning, it probably will feel crazy. It'll probably feel intense. It's probably going to feel like your heart is ripping out for some. For others, it's going to be intense revelation. For others still, it may mean confronting emotional wounds and traumas related to relationships. Some heavy stuff, okay? And from the people I've spoken to thus far, a lot of people seem to be having this experience right now of dealing with issues in relationships, whether it's with an actual partner or a counterpart or just within yourself. Maybe there are things within yourself that are preventing you from having the relationship that you want. Or maybe there are things about yourself that you want to change in order to attract somebody, right? I feel like many of us are sort of feeling these things and dealing with these things at this solar eclipse. This can also do with money, okay, because Venus rules money. And Scorpio, in and of itself, has a lot to do with debt. So many of us may be dealing with money issues. Maybe some debts are coming up, right? Maybe you're experiencing, issues with taxes or with your mortgage or an inheritance or an insurance policy. Any of those things are also up for grabs at this solar eclipse. And again, it's an ending followed by a beginning, okay? And so many of us may get caught up on the ending part, because endings can be a bit tough. And if you're caught up on the ending part, it can be really difficult and challenging to appreciate or even notice the new beginning, because I feel like the new beginning is going to be right around the corner. Okay. Now keep in mind that the energy of eclipses lasts for about 6 months. So it's like the eclipse jump starts things. It's the catalyst for things. It's not like boom, boom, everything's going to happen at the eclipse. Things are going to unfold over the next couple of months. And I want you to take a look at your chart and see where Scorpio is. But I also want you to look at where Taurus is, because these are the two signs where we're having eclipses. We've had eclipses this year and we're having eclipses going into 2023. It's almost like these are the areas of your life that are going to be lit up every couple of months. And whatever areas these two signs control in your life, these are the areas of life where you're going to be experiencing changes and where you're going to be experiencing kind of intense change and maybe even some severe changes, okay? But change is a good thing. We can't stay the same forever. Many of us want to change, but a lot of times we don't know how, we don't know where to start. And the good thing is that I feel like eclipses gives us a push in the right direction. Even if you don't know where to start, I feel like the eclipse is going to show you what needs to be done, what needs to be worked on, what you need to do, what sort of trajectory you need to be on. So I feel like eclipses can be very helpful in that regard. All right. And if you want to know more about this eclipse, I did a dedicated video to the new moon solar eclipse in Scorpio. I'll leave the link in the description box below so you can check that out. All right. It's chock full of information. But again, it's all about transformation, and you kind of it's one of those things where many of us are going to have to let our past die. Okay. Many of the things that we've experienced in the past, especially as it relates to relationships, even if it's not directly correlated to relationships, many things that we hold on to, many of our emotional baggage affects our relationships. And this new moon solar eclipse in Scorpio is going to help sort of clean out some of that stuff. It's going to help us create room for new things, better things that we want in terms of relationships. All right. So that is the new moon solar eclipse. That's Tuesday. And so now we move on to Wednesday. All right, so on Wednesday, we have Mercury trine Mars. So at the top right-hand portion of your screen, you will see Mercury at 25 degrees Libra, and it is going to be trine to Mars, which is at the bottom right-hand portion of the chart at 25 degrees Gemini. All right. So trines are when two planets are 120 degrees apart, and trines are a very positive aspect. It denotes harmony, effortless action. And one thing to remember with trines is that if two planets are trine each other, they're in signs that are of the same element. Okay. So Mercury is in Libra, which is an air sign, and Mars is in Gemini, which is an air sign. They're trine, so they're in signs of the same element. Hopefully that sticks. All right. But this is all about mental dexterity, mental strength. It's all about quick thinking and decisiveness. This is one of those days where it's a good day to engage in anything mental. If you have a lot of work that maybe requires a lot of thinking, it's definitely a good day for that. It may not be the best day for concentration. Okay. So keep that in mind. It'll be a great day to think about things, great day to make decisions, but not necessarily a great day to sit and be focused for a long time. But nevertheless, it's a great day to exercise those mental muscles. All right. This is also being a bit charismatic, being a bit persuasive. If you have to do anything like argue a point, defend your case, this is also going to be a great transit for that. So it's a great transit for lawyers. It's a great transit for judges. Well, maybe not for judges. You may not want to make quick decisions because Mars trine Mercury is all about making quick decisions. But in any event, if you have to do any of those things, it's a great transit for that. It's also good for like debating, public speaking, negotiating. Okay. What I love about Mars energy, and I believe that I mentioned this before, is that it's all about initiation. And so if you're trying to think of things to start, if you're trying to get your mind right in terms of initiating things, this is also a great transit for that. So for all of my manifestors out there, if you're looking to start thinking of things, if you want to manifest something new, you're going to want to at least spend some time on Wednesday thinking about those things, being decisive about what it is that you want to manifest, but also thinking about those things, getting your mental wheels turning when it comes to those things. So it's a great day for affirmations. It's a great day for scripting. It's a great day for visualization. Although I definitely feel like you're not going to have like the energy to concentrate. Mars is a very fast moving energy. And in a sign like Gemini, Mars in Gemini is very about multitasking. It's about, doing a lot of different things. It's not about like prolonged sessions of concentration. So my best advice to everyone on this day, you may find that you get flooded with a bunch of ideas. Keep a pen and paper handy, all right? So write them down because as quick as they come is as quick as it will leave, all right? Again, it's not one of those days for prolonged sessions of concentration, but great for thinking of new things. It's also great for defending yourself. So if you find that you're in a fight, if you find that you're in a confrontation, you'll sort of have the energy and you'll sort of have the words, right, to fight back. You'll be able to defend yourself. If you feel like you're being attacked, it's not the case that you'll just let someone steamroll you. I feel like you're going to find your words and you're going to be able to use them quickly. All right. It's almost like, what is that phrase? It's almost like think of your tongue as your sword. All right. That's pretty much the energy of Mercury trine Mars. All right. So that's Wednesday. So now we move on to Thursday. All right. So on Thursday, we've got Mercury again, but this time Mercury is going to be squaring Pluto. So at the left-hand portion of the chart, you'll see Mercury at 26 degrees Libra, and it will be square to Pluto at 26 degrees Capricorn. Then we also have the moon moving into Sagittarius, and you'll see that in between. That's the moon is in brown there towards the bottom left-hand portion of the chart at 0 degrees Sagittarius. So yeah, let's get into it. All right, so Mercury square Pluto. This can lead to deep interactions with people, deep thinking. This is one of those very philosophical and psychological kind of transits. All right. So many of us can really get to the heart of a matter. One thing about Pluto energy is that it's very investigative. If you know any Scorpios are like private investigators. Ask them to look up something, they will be able to get you all the details. God forbid you are in a relationship and you think your mate is cheating. Ask a Scorpio to go through their social media, to go through whatever. They will get to the heart of the matter. Trust and believe. But the way that this sort of, the way that this transit works, okay, is that you're going to be very pensive. And anything involving Pluto likes to answer the question why. So this isn't just thinking random thoughts. This is really thinking about why things happen, why you want things to happen. This also gives way to a lot of things like conspiracy theories and sort of out there sort of, how would I put this? Extreme ideas, conspiracy theories. And it's sort of this dichotomy because it's a square. A square is all about tension and frustration. So maybe you have these theories about something that are a bit radical or that are considered conspiracy theories. With Mercury and Libra, these theories might not vibe well with everybody. Everyone might not find them palatable, or it may go against the grain in terms of society or what everyone else is thinking or saying about this particular topic. So you run the risk of conflicts when it comes to extreme ideas, things that are taboo, the occult. You know, I can see under this transit, Mercury square Pluto, this is like religion versus spirituality. This is like putting a video out about astrology and people commenting that it's of the devil or that it's not real, stuff like that. Like that's sort of how this transit is going to play out. All right. Again, you can uncover a lot of secrets and mysteries. So even though it's a square, things like mysteries, things like the taboo, things like the occult, you may be able to understand them a bit better. This is also uncovering things that may not be so pleasant, uncovering things that may be repugnant to society. That's sort of how this transit will play out. Now, one of the things that you want to remember with this transit is that you want to keep an open mind. Being closed-minded or narrow-minded is only going to fuel the fire, especially if you're debating or you're speaking with someone or you're involved in some sort of discussion. I feel like the more radical your ideas, the more likely that people will find them offensive or people will find them repugnant or anything like that. So keep that in mind with this particular transit. The next up, we have the moon in Sagittarius. So we start off the week with that new moon solar eclipse in Scorpio, which is very intense. It's very deep, sort of takes us into the gutter in a sense. Then we move into the moon in Sagittarius, which is like a breath of fresh air. It's almost like coming up for air. Scorpio energy is like deep diving. And, you know, now that the moon is moving into Sagittarius, we're literally coming up for air. And I love the energy of moon in Sagittarius because it's all about optimism and faith. It has this sort of happy-go-lucky undercurrent of energy to it. It's all about being spontaneous, going on adventures. We seek our emotional satisfaction from experiencing new things. Spontaneity is a big thing with the moon in Sagittarius. It's just about feeling good and experiencing life, okay? And this is a good reprieve from the intensity of the eclipse, all right? So you might want to just throw caution to the wind on Thursday and just do something out of the ordinary. You know, break away from your routine for a bit and try to experience something new. If there's something that you haven't done before, it's definitely always a good look to do it while the moon is in Sagittarius because the astrology definitely supports it, all right? And so after we leave the new moon solar eclipse, the moon is going to be in the waxing crescent phase. All right. And so I love when the moon is in Sagittarius and it's in the waxing phase because it gives you this optimism for starting, not even starting new things, but for continuing on your trajectory when it comes to your goals. So during the waxing phase is when we take action towards the completion of our goals. And with the moon in Sagittarius, it makes you optimistic. It allows you to see the bigger picture. It gives you faith in the unseen. It gives you, again, that happy-go-lucky kind of energy. All right. And again, I feel like this is a great reprieve from that intensity of the new moon solar eclipse. All right. So that's Thursday. So now we move into Friday. All right. Oh, hello, my friends. How are you? Thank you so much for tuning in. All right, so on Friday, we have a pretty nice transit, which is Jupiter retrograding back into its home sign of Pisces, and it's going to be at the anaretic degree, and I'll explain that in a second. But just know that it's a lot of goodness. Jupiter in its home sign is a lot of good, I don't know, I feel like I want to say wholesome energy, but it's really good energy, all right? So Jupiter has been retrograde for a couple of months. And Jupiter retrograde, it's definitely not a Mercury retrograde. I'll say that much. Jupiter retrograde is all about finding your inner abundance, okay? And Jupiter was in Aries. And Jupiter in Aries is all about starting new things, taking a risk, taking a leap of faith, like ready to just jump off a cliff and figure out how to fly on your way down, all right? That's sort of the essence of Jupiter in Aries. But now that Jupiter is retrograding back into its home sign of Pisces, this is going to allow us to have a 30,000 foot view of things. You know, Jupiter energy is large and in charge, and it's expansive. And in a sign that's very ethereal and out of this world like Pisces, it allows us to tap into our spirituality, number one. But it also allows us to see things from a very big, broad stance and a very big vantage point, okay? It's all about optimism. It's about generosity, especially generosity toward each other. You know, Pisces is an energy of like humanity, and it's an energy of the collective, particularly the collective consciousness. And so with Jupiter in its home sign of Pisces, we have optimism, or at least we kind of think of humanity in an optimistic way, sort of, I guess. It expands our awareness of spirituality and compassion. It's just one of those really feel-good kind of transits. And I said before that Jupiter is going to be at the 29th degree of Pisces, which is known as the anaretic degree. Now, the anaretic degree is it's the last degree of any sign. And it's when things sort of reach a fever pitch. It's like trying to squeeze an orange and just get that last bit of juice out. That's what it's like when a planet is at the anaretic 29th degree. And when a planet is at the anaretic 29th degree of its ruling sign, right? It's like extra special. And because Jupiter is it's called a benefic because it's such a beneficial planet. It has this sort of energy of good luck, good fortune, almost in a way that you may not be able to see. It's not like someone's going to hand you a gift. It might be things working behind the scenes in your favor. It may be sort of like your spirit team moving things around for you. You know, one of the things that I'm being shown right now with Jupiter in Pisces is like, you know, you could be walking down the street and it's like your spirit team takes out everything that could harm you. Your spirit team takes out everything that could trip you up or that could be an obstacle. That's sort of how Jupiter in Pisces works. It's very beautiful energy, and it also allows us to tap into our spirituality. Many of us may be delving into spiritual practices or just learning more about our spiritual bodies or our spirituality in general. But it also allows us to be a little more accepting of spirituality in general. So what I mean by that is, you know, being able to see the bigger picture of things. While you may not agree with someone's spiritual practice, you can sort of have compassion and empathy for them because at the end of the day, we're all one collective consciousness, right? And even though it's expressed in a myriad of ways, it's really, truly just one. And I feel like Jupiter in Pisces is emblematic of that concept. This is having a strong belief in a higher power, again, tapping into that spiritual side. It's also being charitable, tender, affectionate, giving. Jupiter in Pisces is very generous, all right? So wherever Pisces is in your chart, you may find that that's where you feel extra generous, or you're able to be a lot more generous. It may also be where people will be generous with you. So you definitely want to check out where Pisces is in your chart, because that could definitely be something that benefits you. All right. Then it's also being more idealistic and very creative. Okay. So abundance can be found in creativity. And that's extremely true with Jupiter in Pisces. Especially Jupiter is still retrograde. It's about finding your inner creativity. And by the time Jupiter goes direct, and I can't think off the top of my head when that is, but it's not happening for a little bit. That's when you can sort of take that creativity and express it outwardly. But this is all about finding your creativity, your inner creativity, because that's actually where your abundance lies. Okay. So it's a great time to tap into that. It's a great time to be idealistic. It's also a great time to imagine. Jupiter in Pisces is wonderful for the power of imagination. So again, to all my manifestors out there, definitely on Friday, you're going to want to spend some time in your imagination. Whatever you want to manifest, imagine it. Because with Jupiter in Pisces, it's almost like you have a direct line to spirit, to source, to God, to the universe, whatever you believe in. Jupiter in Pisces opens that channel of communication, and the way that you communicate via that channel is your imagination. So you definitely want to tap into that when Jupiter retrogrades into Pisces. Again, I feel like it's such a beautiful transit, so I'm really looking forward to it. All right. And so now we are at Saturday. All right. So on Saturday, we've got Mercury transiting into Scorpio. And we have the moon moving into Capricorn. All right. So you'll see Mercury at the top right-hand portion of your screen, right next to the sun, right next to Venus. And then we have the moon in Capricorn. All right. So Mercury in Scorpio is interesting. Any planet in the sign of Scorpio is interesting because it's always very deep. It's very intense. So let's contrast for a second. So we've got Mercury in Libra. Mercury is ending its little stay in Libra. And while in Libra, Mercury likes to be diplomatic, likes to be friendly, likes for everyone to get along. Mercury in Libra likes to be the peacemaker. Mercury in Libra wants everyone on a level playing field. Mercury in Libra likes to communicate with people in a fair way. Mercury in Libra is a bit charismatic. It's very talkative, very social. Then Mercury goes into Scorpio, and it's a completely different story. Whereas Mercury in Libra knows that life is fair, Mercury in Scorpio knows that life isn't fair. Mercury in Scorpio can take your thoughts to a very dark place. Mercury in Scorpio can have you thinking about things you don't want to think about, can have you thinking about repressed emotions, emotional wounds, secrets, mysteries. Mercury in Libra is very mysterious. And we're talking about thoughts and communications. Mercury in Scorpio. Mercury in Scorpio is all about getting to the heart of the matter. Remember I said before that Scorpio is like the private eye of the zodiac? Well, Mercury in Scorpio, yeah, that's someone with a magnifying glass looking at everything. It's that deep sea diver going to the bottom pit of the ocean. All right. So again, our thoughts and communications are probing and intense. You know that life isn't fair. Now, one of the things about Mercury in Scorpio is that it can fixate on things. Scorpio energy can be a bit obsessive. And so Mercury in Scorpio might find that you fixate on one particular idea, one particular concept, one particular theory, and you just want to break it apart to understand it. Okay. So you may find that Mercury in Scorpio has you focusing on one thing, but focusing on it extremely intensely. This is about taking a psychological approach to analyzing. So this isn't necessarily about like knowledge that you learn from a book. This is sort of, again, anytime you have Scorpio energy, the question is why? And so Mercury in Scorpio wants to find those whys, wants to find the answer to that why. Okay. So it's about taking a psychological approach to things. So even when you're analyzing, when you're studying, when you're deciding and observing, you're taking a much more psychological approach when Mercury is in Scorpio. Again, this is going to dark places mentally. So it can be kind of a tough transit if you deal with a lot of anxiety, if you deal with depression, because Mercury in Scorpio will have you thinking the worst of things or thinking about things from a very dark perspective. But here's the thing, Mercury in Scorpio can also be very persuasive. The thing about Scorpio energy is it's magnetic, but you can't put your finger on it. Like, it's not charismatic like Libra. Libra, you can smell a Libra from a mile away, right? They're very charismatic and a bit magnetic, right? Because they're ruled by Venus. But Scorpio energy is mysterious, it's sexy, it's alluring, but you just don't know why. You're just attracted to it and you like it. So that can also work well for speech and persuasion, like I was just saying before. So if you're looking to convince someone of something, if you're looking to persuade someone of something, you really want to tap into that Scorpio energy. Be a bit elusive, be a bit mysterious, and it kind of just draws people in like moths to flames, really. That's pretty much it. Not being shocked by much. Oh, the fact that Scorpio is a water sign means that many of our thoughts and communications may be emotional, but it's also about using our intuition, okay? Being able to use your intuition, tapping into your intuitive side and your intuitive body, it's going to be a lot easier with Mercury in Scorpio. I feel like understanding your intuition is also going to be a bit easier. So for the next couple of weeks while Mercury is in Scorpio, you're definitely going to want to tap into your intuition. Your intuition never steers you wrong anyway, but I feel like you'll be able to understand your intuition and your intuitive body on a deeper level while Mercury is in Scorpio. All right. And then we have the moon moving into Capricorn. So like I said before, with the moon in Sagittarius, it's about being happy-go-lucky, optimistic, and spontaneous. Moon in Capricorn is not necessarily like that. It's almost like the complete opposite. So when the moon is in Capricorn, we understand structure, discipline, having to work hard. We also become aware of our limitations and our obstacles. And I know that sounds like it sucks, right? A lot of Capricorn energy, it can be tough because it's not necessarily feel good, but a lot of times that Capricorn energy is what we need to move forward. Okay. So it's becoming aware of the need for structure and planning ahead. You understand the limits of time. I feel like the best use of your time when the moon is in Capricorn is to just get to work. Be diligent, be goal oriented, and be disciplined with respect to reaching that goal. And I feel like you'll feel good about that. You know, the moon represents our emotions. And so with a sign like Capricorn that can be rigid and really concerned about work and achieving goals, you're going to feel good if you're going to be able to achieve some of those goals. One of the best things I love about the moon in Capricorn is that it's like crossing things off your to-do list. You know, you have a goal and you break it down into sizable action steps, right? You break it down into little action steps. And then as you take those action steps, you're able to cross that off your list. And as you cross it off your list, it takes you one step closer to your goal. Doing that is how we derive our emotional satisfaction when the moon is in Capricorn. And being that the moon is in the waxing crescent phase, this is about taking action steps. So I would really say while the moon is in Capricorn, and it'll be in Capricorn from Saturday, probably until about Monday of next week, you're going to want to think of a goal and break it down into action steps and then start taking those action steps. And as you take those action steps, cross it off your list and you're going to feel good. You're going to feel like you're making strides towards the things that you want and towards the things that you achieve. You know, achievement is a great feeling, but think about what goes into achieving something. The road to achievement can really suck sometimes, right? Like, you know, a lot of things take hard work. They take dedication, they take consistency, they take discipline. But if you do all of those things, you know how good you feel at the end when you've reached your goal, when you've achieved what you wanted to achieve. That's the essence of Capricorn energy. So I would say by and large over the weekend, think of what you want to do, create the action steps and start taking them, and then cross them off your list and bask in the wonderful feeling of achievement and success. That's the essence of Capricorn energy. All right. Then we move on to Sunday. There we go. All right. So Sunday is a pretty big deal because we have Mars going retrograde in Gemini, and you'll see Mars at that 25th degree of Gemini. And this is when Mars is going to start, as we learned earlier, it's from our vantage point here on Earth, Mars will appear to be moving backward. That's the essence of retrograde energy. So like I said before, Mars does not go retrograde every year. Just to put it in perspective for you, Mercury goes retrograde 2 to 3 times a year. Actually, no, it's 3 to 4 times a year. Okay. Venus goes retrograde about every 18 months. Mars goes retrograde every 2 years. It's actually the planet that goes retrograde the least out of the solar system. Because of its orbit, it goes retrograde the least. So planets like Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, those go retrograde every year. They actually spend about between 4 months and 6 months out of the year retrograde. So of all the planets, Mars goes retrograde the rarest. And so when it does, we tend to really feel it. So normally when Mars is direct, Mars is what gives us energy. It's like vital life force energy. It gives us physical energy to do things. It allows us to start things. It allows us to take risks. It allows us to be bold and dynamic and do things. Mars is very much a planet of doing. It's an energy of doing. Mars is like firing on all cylinders. It's like a firecracker. It's like, just a roaring fire. That's the energy of Mars. So that's Mars direct, I should say. When it goes retrograde, it's almost the complete opposite. So Mars retrograde is lethargic. Doesn't want to really start anything. It's sluggish. And it's more so about rest. I love Mars retrograde energy because it shows us that rest is necessary. Even in the cosmos, the way that the cosmos operates, you can't be running on all cylinders all the time. You're going to burn out. And so Mars retrograde, it's really about preventing burnout. Now I want you to take a look at your chart and see where Gemini is. Mars first went into Gemini back in August. So wherever Gemini is in your chart, that's probably where you experience a lot of energy, a lot of motivation. You're probably really amped and motivated to do new things. I'll give you a perfect example. For me, Gemini is my second house. The second house covers money and material possessions. When I tell you, when Mars entered, right before Mars officially entered Gemini, I was doing the most here at Divine Feminine Works. I had planned things out for months. I was cranking out content. I still am doing a lot in terms of money generating projects, especially starting new money generating projects. And so, so you say Gemini is in your 10th house. All right, that's the house of careers. So you may be really on it. Like when Mars first went into Gemini, you were probably really on it in terms of either moving up the corporate ladder, starting a business, maybe starting a YouTube channel. Anything career was amped. It was motivated. It was energized, right? So you may have been doing a lot. Again, because Mars represents physical activity and physical energy. So you probably were doing a lot, right? And it's almost like to prevent burnout, Mars is going retrograde. So now, between now and January, because Mars is going to be retrograde in Gemini until January, this is going to be the time when you're going to rest. It's not like you totally stop, but you may find it a little difficult to maintain those energy levels that you've been used to over the last couple of months. You're going to notice that. And that's a good thing, again, because I feel like it prevents burnout. I feel like it allows you to rest. But most importantly, I feel like this is the essence of Mars retrograde. It allows you to reevaluate and reassess where you've been spending your energy. Okay. So if you've been doing a lot over the last couple of months, now while Mars is retrograde, it's a great time to look at your results and see if the energy you've been putting into these activities over the last couple of months is actually yielding the results that you want. It's a great time to review things like metrics. It's a great time to review your results in general. It's a great time to get feedback on things if you've been putting forth energy into new projects. But again, it's really a time to sort of rest, okay? You don't want to be firing on all cylinders all the time. And Mars allows for a lull in the energy so you can chill, right? So you can rest, so you can recharge your batteries. And so that you can assess where you've been putting your energy and if it makes sense. Mars also has a lot to do with our passions and our desires. And so Mars retrograde allows us to reassess those things. Have you been putting energy into things that you are passionate about, or have you just been doing busy work? Because Mars in Gemini has a propensity for just doing busy work. It may not be focused. It may not be in alignment with your desires. And Mars retrograde is the perfect time for you to assess those goals and whether they're in alignment with your desires and your passions. This is also a time to address your sexual health. Mars is all about sex, especially as it pertains to the physical body, the physical activity of sex. So this is a great time to get some checkups. This is a great time to assess your sexual health. Also deal with things like sexual desire, your passions on a sexual level, and things like that. Reassessing and rethinking those things are also great activities to do while Mars is retrograde. Now Mars in Gemini is like a scatterbrain. Okay. And so now that Mars is going to go retrograde, it may give you the opportunity to sort of quiet your mind and not be firing on all cylinders mentally. Okay. So it's a great time to sort of relax, reassess what you've been thinking about, and probably concentrate a little better. When Mars was direct in Gemini, you might have found it very hard to concentrate. You might have found it very hard to sit and focus on something for a prolonged period of time. Thankfully, with Mars retrograde, it's going to allow us to quiet down, power down, recharge our batteries, and avoid burnout wherever Gemini is in your chart. All right. So it's great. I think it's a great retrograde. Like I said before, when I was teaching y'all about retrograde, not every retrograde is like Mercury retrograde. And I think Mars retrograde is actually one of those positive retrogrades because it allows you to physically rest. All right. So my friends, that is the weekly astro forecast for the week of October 24th through October 30th. I sincerely hope that you were able to get at least one important piece of information that you can use going forward. Again, if you want to check out more on what the solar eclipse in Scorpio is all about, the link to that video will be in the description box below. If you'd like to get a natal chart reading from me, if you'd like to book any of my other services, or if you're interested in any of my products, all of those links and all of that pertinent information will be in the description box below. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for joining me in the Astro Room this week. I wish you nothing but the best, not just for this week, but for this solar eclipse. I love you all. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you guys next week. All right, take care.